Hello. With all the talk about the U.S. government shutdown, there's a lot of confusion. People are asking everything from what exactly is a shutdown to will I still get my Social Security check? So in this video, I'm going to answer 50 of the most searched questions about the shutdown, starting with the ones people ask most often, so you can get the answers you care about first. You can see the list in the description, and you can jump to write it, whatever it is you're looking for if you'd like. I'm Charles. This is One Life, Many Lessons. Let's jump in. Shutdown Basics. What is a government shutdown? Well, government shutdown happens when Congress fails to pass its annual spending bills or a temporary funding measure. Without legal authority to spend money, many federal agencies have to partially close, sending hundreds of thousands of workers home without pay and halting non-essential services. Well, when does a shutdown begin? A shutdown begins immediately after funding authority expires. Congress missed the midnight deadline of September 30th. The shutdown started at 12:01 a.m. on October 1st. Who decides which federal employees keep working? Well, each federal agency creates a shutdown contingency plan. These plans outline which jobs are accepted, meaning essential to protecting life and property, such as air traffic controllers, border patrol, military operations. Will furloughed employees be paid? Not during the shutdown itself. Furloughed employees are placed on unpaid leave. However, under current law, once the shutdown ends, they are guaranteed back pay, though the timing depends on payroll processing. Do accepted employees get paid on time? Again, no. Even though they're kept working, their pay is also delayed until Congress passes funding. Once the government reopens, they receive full back pay. Will federal employees eventually get back pay? Yes. Since 2019, federal law requires that all furloughed and accepted employees receive back pay after a shutdown ends. In previous shutdowns, this was not guaranteed and had to be decided case by case. Are contractors affected? Yes. Contractors such as janitorial staff, cafeteria workers, or IT services are often not paid during shutdowns, and unlike federal employees, they typically do not receive back pay when the shutdown ends. Benefits and payments. Will Social Security benefits be disrupted? No. Social Security benefits are considered mandatory spending, and they continue even during a shutdown. Field offices may close or reduce hours, and new applications could face delays, but monthly checks are still issued. Will IRS tax refunds stop? Yes. Refunds may be delayed. The IRS is partially closed during shutdowns, so while tax returns can still be filed electronically, refunds may not be processed until funding resumes. Are Medicare and Medicaid affected? Core Medicare and Medicaid benefits continue because they are mandatory programs. However, some administration functions like call centers or new program approvals could slow down. Will SNAP food stamps continue? SNAP benefits generally continue, but a prolonged shutdown may strain USDA funding reserves. During past shutdowns, there were concerns about running out of funds for future months if the shutdown dragged on. Will unemployment benefits continue? Yes. Unemployment benefits are run by states, but federally supported. States continue paying claims, though federal staff who support processing may be unavailable, causing slower service. What happens to new benefit applications? Applications for Social Security, Medicare, passports, or other services may be delayed if staff are furloughed. Programs that rely on annual funding rather than mandatory spending are more likely to pause. Services and closures. Which services will be cut or curtailed? Anything deemed non-essential. This includes many federal research projects, grant reviews, processing of small business loans, and some routine inspections. Essential services like mail delivery, military operations, and Social Security payments continue. Will natural parks and museums close? It depends. In some shutdowns, parks and museums close completely. In others, they remained open, but with limited staff. This can lead to unsafe or unsanitary conditions. Museums like the Smithsonian often close because they rely directly on federal funding. Are courts affected? Well, federal courts stay open for a short period using reserve funds. But if the shutdown lasts beyond that, some staff may be furloughed and civil cases could face delays. Criminal cases typically continue because they're considered essential. Well, visa and passport services stop. If fees are available to cover operations, passport and visa services continue, though they may be slowed down due to reduced staff. If the shutdown is prolonged, some consulates and passport offices could suspend operations. Is the president able to end a shutdown on their own? No. Only Congress can restore funding by passing appropriations bills or a temporary continuing resolution, and the president must sign it into law. The president cannot unilaterally end a shutdown. Well, what is a continuing resolution? A continuing resolution, or a CR, is a temporary funding measure that keeps government operations running at current levels for a set period. It's often used to avoid shutdowns while Congress negotiates long-term budget. Money in the economy. Does a shutdown actually save money? No. In fact, shutdowns usually cost money. Agencies have to stop and restart operations, pay furloughed employees retroactively, and absorb economic ripple effects. The Congressional Budget Office estimates billions in losses for each prolonged shutdown. How does it affect the economy? Shutdowns reduce consumer confidence, they delay government contracts, and they slow business activity that depends on federal approvals. The longer the shutdown, the greater the economic drag, especially for communities with a large federal workforce. What about small business loans and SBA programs? Well, new loans and services from the Small Business Administration usually stop during a shutdown, since staff who process applications are furloughed. Existing loans keep functioning, but entrepreneurs looking for new funding face delays. Will veteran benefits or VA services be affected? Core VA benefits such as Medicaid, medical care, disability compensation, and pensions continue because they're mandatory. However, administrative services, process of new claims, and certain support programs may be slowed down. Will FEMA disaster response stop? FEMA continues life and safety operations, such as responding to natural disasters. However, long-term projects, mitigation grants, and administrative support may be delayed during a shutdown. Will U.S. Postal Service stop delivering mail? No. The Postal Service is self-funded through postage and fees, not tax dollars. So mail delivery continues. It continues normally during a shutdown. Military and security. Will military personnel get paid? Not during a shutdown. Active duty military members are required to keep working, but their pay is delayed until funding is restored. Once Congress passes a funding bill, service members receive full back pay. Do reservists or Guard members get paid? Reservists and National Guard members also see delayed pay if a shutdown overlaps with their duty periods. Training may be postponed unless it's deemed mission critical. What about housing allowances and other benefits? Housing allowances, subsistence allowances, and other benefits tied to military pay are delayed during a shutdown. Once back pay is issued, all these allowances are included retroactively. How long have past shutdowns lasted? Well, shutdowns have ranged from just a day or two to the record is a 35-day shutdown in the late 2018 and early 2019. The length depends on how quickly Congress and the President reach a funding agreement. Do official economic reports, like jobs or inflation data, get delayed? Yes. Agencies like the Bureau of Labor Statistics and Census Bureau typically pause their reports. This can affect everything from financial markets to Federal Reserve decisions, since they rely on this data. Education, grants, and housing. Will new grants or infrastructure funding stop? Yes. Agencies that award grants or funding infrastructure projects cannot issue new money during a shutdown. Projects already funded usually continue, but new applications and reviews are put on hold. If I call a federal agency, won't anyone answer? Well, in many cases, no. Call centers and often help desks are often closed or running with minimal staff. Websites may remain online, but responses to emails or calls may not happen until after the shutdown ends. Will passport appointments be canceled? Passport offices funded by fees generally remain open, but they may have fewer staff. If the office is in a federal building that closes, appointments there could also be canceled. Backlogs often grow during shutdowns. Can parts of the government keep running using fee revenue? Yes. Agencies that generate their own revenue, like the U.S. Postal Service or certain visa passport services, can often keep operating, as long as their fee-based funds cover expenses. Do federal employees qualify for unemployment? Yes. Furloughed federal employees can apply for unemployment benefits during the shutdown. However, because they're guaranteed back pay, when it ends, they may later have to repay those benefits. Can courts face Congress to end a shutdown? No. Shutdowns are a political and legislative issue. Courts can't order Congress to fund the government. Lawsuits may arise over specific impacts, but the core shutdown must be resolved by lawmakers. What happens to housing and HUD programs? HUD continues to pay rental assistance contracts and housing vouchers as long as funding reserves last. If a shutdown drags on, payments could be delayed, affecting landlord and tenants in subsidized housing. Health research and daily life. Does a shutdown really save money? No. Again, while some spending pauses temporarily, agencies must restart operations afterward, which adds costs. Employees are paid retroactively, even if they weren't working, and lost productivity is never recovered. Shutdowns end up costing taxpayers more. Will public health and disease monitoring be affected? Yes. Agencies like the CDC and FDA often suspend some inspections, food safety monitoring, and disease tracking. Emergency response continues, but preventative programs are disrupted, which can put public health at risk. Will visa backlogs get worse? Absolutely. Even if some visa processing continues during fees, staff shortages during a shutdown lead to slower processing times and bigger backlogs once operations fully resume. What happens to student aid, Pell Grants, and the FAFSA existing Pell Grants and federal student loans? While federal student loans continue to be paid out since they're mandatory spending, but support service, FAFSA processing, and new program approvals may slow significantly. Can states or local governments step in? In some cases, yes. During past shutdowns, states have temporarily funded federal programs like national parks or certain social services to keep them running locally. But this is optional and often unsustainable long term. Can people sue over shutdown delays? Lawsuits can be filed, but courts usually dismiss them because shutdowns are political disputes. Unless a specific legal right is violated, delays caused by lack of funding are not something courts can override. Will federal courts pause jury trials? Not at first. Courts can use reserve funds for a short time, but in a prolonged shutdown, jury trials in civil cases may be postponed. Criminal cases are prioritized as essential. Do research agencies like NASA and NIH shut down? Yes. Many research projects pause. NASA delays most missions and research unless tied to safety. NIH halts new clinical trials and research grants, though patient care at NIH hospitals continue. Do museums and visitor centers close? Yes. Many federally funded museums and visitor centers like the Smithsonian or National Parks facilities close during a shutdown. Even if parks remain open, facilities inside them often shut down. Will federal housing subsidies stop? Housing choice vouchers, Section 8, and similar programs may face delays if a shutdown is prolonged. HUD generally has some reserve funds, but landlords may not be paid on time if those run out. Where can people find reliable shutdown updates? The best sources are official government websites, like opm.gov for federal workers, reputable news outlets, and nonpartisan organizations like the Congressional Research Service. Social media often spreads rumors. Always double-check official sources. What should federal employees do to be prepared? Employees are encouraged to budget conservatively, delay major expenses, and check whether they qualify for unemployment during the shutdown. Many credit unions and banks also offer short-term loans to federal workers during funding lapses. What's the history of U.S. shutdowns? Well, since 1976, there have been 21 shutdowns, ranging from a single day to over a month. They've happened both under Republican and Democratic leadership, and they usually reflect political fights over spending priorities, health care, or border security. And that's it. There you have it. 50 of the most common questions about government shutdowns answered. If you found this helpful, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which of these answers surprised you the most. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.